Obviously, Madonna making her debut on Bandstand. Dick Cavett, the former host of the legendary Dick Cavett Show, joins us on the phone. Dick, thank you so much for joining us. We also have California Congressman David Dreier, two good friends, longtime friends of Dick Clark. First to you, Dick Cavett. You appeared, I think, more than 80 times on the Pyramid shows. I wanted to show a brief exchange of you, Dick Cavett, of course, with Dick Clark.
Okay.
You realize you're the first person in 13 years this show has been on the air ever thought to transmit code with their eyelids?
Yes, that's how I've been winning all these years. I go collect this with my eyelids, and it's Morse code.
I think we might detect it.
Dick, you and that I went back and looked at the whole episode, and you went on and gave such brilliant cues that your contestant won everything.
Yes,
thousands and thousands of dollars, $10,000. She owes it all to you. But tell us about Dick Clark and
he was
the
a
importance
deceptive
of him.
individual to me because, well, for one thing, Andrea, we shared a problem. Every time we met, he'd say, "How many Are You Dick Clarks did you get?" And I would say, "How many Dick Cavetts did you get?" Until finally, I don't think either of us was sure, but it happened all the time. He was deceptive in the fact that I think his great popularity had to be the fact that something to do anyway with the fact that he seemed unremarkable in a way, unthreatening, friendly, but not terribly remarkable, maybe not terribly brilliant. And yet, of course, he had to be to do the things he did, to accomplish what he did, to have the acute business sense that he had, and to be funny. Our relationship would be things like, on the air, he'd say, "Our next guest comes all the way from Florida." And I would say, "Dick, if she hadn't come all the way, she wouldn't be here, would she?" And he would laugh, and we would giggle and have a nice time. I once busted their budget for the week, having never been on the show, pretending I had seen it, and therefore not having any nerves. After that, I learned how nerve-wracking it was, and it was never so easy. But he even got me into an investment of his once, and it was one of his few disasters. Some kind of video cassette type thing that was going to replace all the social media and so on, although they weren't social then. And I ran into him one day and I said, "What shall I do with my big player that I still have, since obviously this thing is tanked?" And he said, "Do you have a boat?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you need an anchor?" So I didn't tie it up and use it as one. But I wish he'd written a book about his, not only his business skills, but his techniques for bringing things to the public, to making things work. He said he claimed to love to sit in what would kill me, which are business meetings where people discuss such tactics and things. Complicated guy. Have you found anyone who thinks he was a rat just for variety? Because
no, I mean,
I don't know any.
That's the amazing thing. Everyone liked him so much. Congressman Dreier, you just had dinner with him a couple of weeks ago, and we know that he was suffering, that he did his last New Year's Eve, but he had I guess a series of strokes.
Andrea, let me just tell you.
Tell me about his health when you last saw him.
Let me tell you, he wasn't suffering, and let me tell you that Dick Cavett is wrong. Dick Clark just recently told me that while he encouraged Dick Cavett to invest in that cassette thing, he knew it was going to be a flop, and so he never actually put a penny into it himself. So I just want you to know that, Dick.
I love that.
Well,
so now he was a little bit of a rat.
Yeah. Now I tell you,
wonderful.
because and I will tell you that everything he did touch turned to gold. He was an extraordinary.
This turned to dross, whatever you say.
I know, and that's why I'm telling you, he didn't touch it. He put it all on your shoulders, Cavett.
I know. Now you've given me a whole new image of him, and certainly of you.
Good. Yeah. Thanks.
By the way, I was just going to say that his vaunted youthfulness was one of the wonders of the age.
Right.
But finally, when he got into his 80s, he did begin to look at least 50.
Yeah, well, not quite. I will tell you that I want to shatter this myth that you just threw out there, Andrea. He was, let me tell you, beyond the Dick Cavett, Dick Clark investment, I will tell you that Dick Clark worked every day of his life right up to the end. And this notion that he was in failing health, yeah, he had suffered a stroke in 2004, but, I mean, he worked hard. He was always there. His mind was as sharp as can be. He, there's a side to him that people did not see, and that is one that was extraordinarily warm. You know, he loved dogs. He named his dogs for the songs that he introduced on American Bandstand. He had a Weimaraner called Henry for I'm Henry VIII I Am. He still has another Weimaraner called Arthur for Arthur's Theme. Two pugs. One is named Jonesy for Me and Mrs. Jones. The other is Leroy for Bad Bad Leroy Brown. And I will tell you, while I was not on American Bandstand. I didn't play with Dick Cavett on the Pyramid, and I thank God he never got any of my bloopers recorded. He and I, just a couple of weeks ago, he and I were sharing some of our bloopers together. One great line that I will tell you was just an incredible one. 2 years ago at New Year's Eve, his wonderful wife Carrie leaned over to kiss him at midnight, and he whispered in her ear, and everyone said, "Oh, Carrie, did Dick say you're the love of my life? I can't live without you. You know, you're just an incredible part of everything I am." She said, "No." He said, "Get out of the shot. I work alone." That was his. That was his response.
Always the performer.
Yeah,
you know, Dick Cavett, as another performer,
he had a quick verbal intelligence that
yes, he did.
Was, I think, deceptively.
Well, let me ask you, Dick Cavett, about his influence on music. Is there any other single person, you know, maybe from Motown, some of the leaders, Berry Gordy, but is there anyone else who had as big an influence on rock and roll and on the change, including the racial barriers that were broken down on that show?
Well, that was one of the best things about it, I think, and I'm sure he got a lot of flack for having too many colored, as some people like to put it. And he was a force for good in that sense, certainly. I don't know if he got the nasty mail and threats that people got.
He got lots of nasty mail, Dick. I will tell you, he got lots of nasty mail, and he's told me some stories just recently about the kind of virulence, but he felt passionately. You know, he was proud to say that he had the ability to put black kids and white kids in the same room, and they didn't kill each other. And, you know, he saw that as a great accomplishment.
Yeah, there really ought to be a monument to him in those ways, because it took a certain amount of courage. I'm sure there were plenty of the morons who like to bring you to your knees financially, at least threatening to, by saying, "I'm going to write to every one of your sponsors." And,
that kind of stuff. Well, I will tell you, he also continued to be a mentor. I just really got to know him well in the last several years. His family, his wonderful children, all of whom are in the industry, Cindy and Rack and Dwayne are in the entertainment industry. They were all together on Easter Sunday having a great time. And Dick had very minor surgery. He had cataract surgery last week, and this morning he was actually scheduled to have cataract surgery again. He had just a minor procedure, prostate, not cancerous or anything, day before yesterday. He had breakfast with his wife Carrie yesterday morning, and he was doing well. And then he was just hit by this massive heart attack.
Well,
and of course, he was never caught in any scandals, as he might have been if he'd been in, say, the Secret Service.
Yeah, or, you know, financial scandals by encouraging Dick. I have some investments for you, Dick, that I want to recommend, by the way.
We're going to have
Clark
to let
told
you
me
guys...
to call you, Dick.
Listen, I've still got that machine somewhere, and I think you're going to get it.
You might be able to get
camera,
some
because I think, Dick Cavett, you could help... Congressman Dreier, you can help Dick Cavett out with some of those returns.
I'm from the government. I'm here to help you, you know.
Oh, well, that's a switch.
Yeah, exactly.
You see? Thank you both very much for remembering Dick Clark. Congressman Dave Dreier from California, Dick Cavett, of course, a television icon himself. And up next, speaking of government, saving the post office with Montana Senator Jon Tester. Plus, has the 2012 election gone to the dogs? And we'll take you inside